Kedves kilencedikesek, eljött az idő, hogy a következő témával foglalkozzunk, és immár az Árpád-kor vége felé járunk, és megbeszéltük már ugye az állam megalapítását, utána a megszilárdítását László és Kálmán idején, illetve a múlt órán a második András-féle aranybullával is foglalkoztunk, ami a társadalmi rétegződések kialakulását és a különböző előjogok, kiváltságok rendszerét mutatta be. Most arról kell beszélnünk, hogy ez a fejlődő királyság milyen gondokkal találkozik a 13. század derekán, de ahogy láthatod, a tatárjárással fogunk foglalkozni. A tatárjárással azonban csak úgy foglalkozhatunk, hogyha 4. Béla uralkodását vesszük alapul. So, ladies and gents, our topic today is the Mongol Invasion, which was in 1241-42. It was only 2 years, but actually the destruction was so serious that the Hungarian kingdom had to be reorganized. We are going to speak about the reign of Béla IV before the invasion. We are going to speak about that, the invasion itself, and then the policy after the invasion. These are the most important topics. Let's start with the Béla IV. Well, he was king of Hungary between 1235 and 1270, and he was the successor of Andrew II. He wanted to get back all the granted territories, because you remember Andrew II's policy was that he granted a lot of lands to barons, and by this the royal lands shrank. So Béla IV didn't like this policy, so he stopped granting lands, and he started a kind of fight against the mighty barons, the greatest landowners. Many were imprisoned, and he also punished the enemies who didn't like this policy. And at the same time, he humiliated the barons who didn't want to cooperate, because, for example, in the royal council, in the room, he burned the chairs of the barons, so it was only him, the king, who could sit down. That was really humiliating for the barons. What is the result? Well, in this very strict policy, he actually lost the supporters. So a lot of barons turned their backs to the king, and there was a general dissatisfaction among the wealthy layers, of course. But unfortunately, right at the beginning of his reign, he got the bad news about the Mongols. The bad news mean that the Tartars or Mongols, you can use both words, they were coming. In 1236, a monk, Brother Julian or Julianus Barat, he returned from the east because he had been sent to the east to find Hungarians who remained in the steppes. And he met them. He met Magyars, Hungarians in Magna Hungaria and Bashkiria. If you remember, this was a very far place at the Ural Mountain and Volga region. And he could find some Magyar people who could speak Hungarian, and they could speak. So actually, in the 13th century, Brother Julianus could understand those people who stayed there since the 7th century. That's a fantastic thing. But the problem was that he got news from the different peoples there that the Mongols, the Tartars, were coming towards the west, and they already conquered eastern European territories, and they are coming. In 1240, Kiev, the last bigger settlement, was lost to the Tatars, so they were coming towards the country. Well, at the same time, the Cumans, a nomadic people, they were fleeing from the Mongols, and they were pushed towards the Carpathian Basin. And these nomadic people were very good fighters. So the Cumans, magyarul kunok, they were invited by Béla, the king. He let them in the country and settled them down in the country. And actually he hoped military assistance. So when the Mongols come, they could unite the Cuman army and the Magyars and the Hungarian army. Well, The Cumans promised to take the Christianity, take the religion, but it was really unsuccessful at that time. So there was no assimilation, so they couldn't fit in the local society because they were nomadic people, animal breeders, just like the Hungarians had been hundreds of years before. At that time, there was settled agricultural lifestyle, and it was absolutely different from the nomadic animal breeding lifestyle. Finally, Köthen, the Cuman king, was murdered, and this is why the Cumans left the country. So the king Béla lost the help which he had hoped. So actually, the Cumans didn't help us. So what happened in 1241-42? But the country was not yet ready. Béla recruited the people. He wanted them to fight, so a bloody sword as a sign of fight was carried around the country. There was no foreign help, so actually the Pope didn't help and the neighboring countries didn't help. So the Mongols attacked, and Hungary had to solve this problem alone. The Mongols were nomadic light cavalry people, just like the forgotten Hungarian fighters had been. And they came through the Carpathian passes just like the Magyars had come with Árpád and the others. Same thing happened just a few hundred years after. They were led by Batu Khan, please remember this name. The main army came through Verecka Pass just like Árpád had come. There was a final battle. Actually, the Hungarian army was not strong enough to fight this fantastic wave of nomadic fighters. It was in April, on the 11th of April in 41, it was the Battle of Muhi. Important to remember that. Hungarians had bad tactics because they built fort of wagons, just like this. As you see, a wagon fort, and when the Mongols were coming, they could easily burn down this wagon warfare, so it was not very safe. So the army lost, and the king had to flee. The king didn't get help in the west, so actually even the western neighbor Friedrich Babenberg robbed him out and let him go. So our king Béla was desperate. Finally, he got shelter in Dalmatia, in the Croatian part of the country, at Trogir. That time it was called Trau, and the Mongols couldn't catch him. So it's important that the king could survive, but he was in a castle. What happened? The Tatars came in the country and they destroyed the whole country to the east from the Danube. So the Danube was a kind of line, a border they couldn't pass, they couldn't cross. They had to wait for the winter ice. The Mongols actually robbed everything. They collected taxes from the people, they enslaved or killed the population. Many people were hiding in the mountains, and they took a lot of slaves and burned down villages. So that was a really destructive event. If you see this, this is the line of the Danube. This is how they came. Batu came through the Verecka Pass, but other passes also, and they destroyed the eastern part of the country, okay? But in the west, we are going to speak about it. I would like you to see that there are several fortresses, and these fortresses actually they could resist. This is an important information. So what happened in the following year? During the winter they crossed the Danube and they started dropping out the western part, but the destruction was not that serious. So the most serious destruction was in the east. Now in the west there are stone fortresses, they could resist the attacks. In March, so it was not a very long destruction. In March, the Mongols unexpectedly left the country. So actually, we don't know the reason. Maybe it was because of the Khan election, because the great Khan Ögödei died in Mongolia, and Batu wanted to be present at the next Khan election, or only prepared for a bigger offensive. Actually, it didn't happen. They came again, but it was easy to stop them at that time, later. Their goal was only frightening and getting prey? We don't know. So they looted the country only? We don't know. They couldn't strengthen their power? Yeah, because actually they didn't get the king, so the king was still there? We don't know. But what happened? They burned down what they could. In the west, these fortresses survived. This is where the king fled. This is true. And as you see here, they went home in the south. They left the country in March. So the country was there. After destruction, what happened? Let's talk about the after part. The destruction and the demographic change which followed. As you see, this is how historians believe the population was lost. There are different estimates that in 800 or between 8 and 900, how many people could have lived in the country. Some people say there was more than 1 million, some would say only 500,000. And when the Mongols came, the destruction can be very optimistic or pessimistic. We don't know. About 20 or 50% of population lost. We don't know. But it was about 2 million. This is another estimate number. But the destruction was not the same everywhere. I told you that the western part was less damaged. Immigration started. So the king called back the Cumans because there were empty territories. A lot of people died. So they now settled down. They had Kiskunság, Nagykunság. This is where their name is in the name. The Yas people in Jasság, Transylvania, a lot of Romanian people. At that time they were called Vlachs, Olaho. Polish and Czech people from the north. We can say that many people immigrated to the empty country. About 70–80% of the population is still Hungarian. So they were majority, absolute majority of Hungarians. What is the new policy of the king? Well, this is what we call second state founding. Béla IV is called the second state founder of the country. We have policy change because he started granting lands. He knew that this is the only way to survive. So he had to prepare the army. So he let nobles and wealthy people, landowners, create their bandarial armies under their own banner. Bandarial means that they fight under their own flag or banner. So there were their own armies could be set up, and they had to build stone castles. So whatever land they got from the king, they had to build stone castles because they will be successful against the Mongols if they come back. He also built castles himself. Buda became a new royal seat, and Visegrad castle on the top of the hill was created. He also developed towns, so settlements got privileges. They could build walls to defend themselves, and a lot of incoming immigrants, hospi, guests, got privileges, just come and help the development of our country. So they started looking for allies. Béla IV also wanted a peaceful foreign policy. He wanted to prepare for another Mongol attack if they come back. By the end of this reign, everything changed in Hungary because the barons got huge territories because of the grantings, and they got huge power, and familiarity started. I'm going to speak about familiarity, a kind of family link between nobles later. And this is the age of the oligarchs, so it's a new age to come after this period. Going to speak about it later. As you see, we have a lot of new castles in the 14th century built, and in Béla's time, the number of castles absolutely started to increase. And we end with the legends. Saint Margaret. Béla had daughters, Margaret, Kinga, and Yolanda. Kinga and Yolanda became Polish queens, and they also became saints, but I think we should know Saint Margaret. She was offered by the king, if the country survived the Tatar invasion, he would offer his daughter to God. This is how Saint Margaret became a nun, And on Margaret Island, which was the island of rabbits before it had been, Margaret got a nunnery and she lived there in the island and died there. A lot of miracles are connected to her name. So Saint Margaret, you should know, she is a very important Hungarian saint. So this is what we should know about Béla IV and the Mongol invasion.